Making direct eye contact with someone can actually be the sign of something sinister. This is the focus group.
It's the savvy side of 9 to 5. Listen.
Bueller, Bueller, Bueller.
Laugh. And learn.
Negotiation. This is what you do in business.
This is the focus group with Tim Bennett.
Staunch.
And John Nash.
Keep your clothes looking neat and clean.
We're all business. Except when we're not.
Welcome to the focus group. This is John Nash, and I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Mr. Tim Bennett. I can now say, welcome to April.
It's a pretty pink shirt.
I'm wearing this in honor of April. It's my pink shirt, yeah. And I wore this once to visit my mom in the hospital, and her nurse goes, "You know, you're a man who's not afraid of color."
You know, pink never used to be associated with femininity or whatever. I read this whole thing about pink. You know, there's a big study about pink.
A big study.
There's a big study done about pink and how pink came into vogue and how pink was worn. And it was initially for men initially.
And it was a color that was like a power color, right?
Yeah, you should read the study. I like pink.
Well, yeah, I don't dislike it. I think I look good in it, actually. But I've been always told it's like, you know.
We had pink uniforms in college for rowing off season because that way you could pretend you were a club or something, so you weren't wearing your school colors. So we were navy blue and white. But if you wore pink, which I always thought was odd. I still have the pink socks and the pink shorts. Yeah, you're a club at that point.
You're a club, okay.
Yeah, not organized. So what?
So before I forget,
what are you doing with your phone?
I'm grabbing the phone because I literally read it on the way down here. Now, normally we do business birthdays. This is a Tim thing. But today I read the obituary for Charles Sanna, S-A-N-N-A, man behind Swiss Miss Instant Cocoa.
Oh,
dies at 101 years old. So here's the thing: where do you think Swiss Miss Cocoa actually, came from? Yeah,
I would take a guess as Wisconsin.
Well, or I should say, let me rephrase that. Why do you think they invented Swiss Miss or powdered cocoa?
Was it for the war?
Very, very good, very good. If an army travels on its stomach, Charles Sanna helped win the Korean War.
For God's sake.
He developed a way to produce millions of individual packets of powdered coffee creamer for American troops. Military contracts stipulated, though, that his family's company, Sanna Dairy Engineers, would be penalized if the orders were underfilled. So I guess each thing had to have a certain amount. So, to be safe, the company produced extra packets. But that meant that it was routinely stuck with excess supply, since the Army also insisted that none of the overstock be used to fill future orders. Anyway, this evolved into cocoa with the little marshmallows.
You still do instant cocoa? I don't.
Yeah, I do. Now and then in the wintertime.
Really?
Yeah.
You like hot chocolate?
I do, yeah.
I figured you would. I haven't had... I used to like the little marshmallows.
Oh, that's what the Swiss Miss thing that's for, yeah.
So so he died. When did he die? Recently?
Well, it says here Mr. Sanna died on March 13th in Madison, Wisconsin. His daughter Lucy Sanna said he was 101. So why this popped up today?
I wonder how much money they made.
I don't know. It's an interesting
probably sold it to somebody,
family business, right?
Yeah.
I think that who owns this now? Nestle, maybe. Well, it says here the brand was sold in '67 to Beatrice Foods, which was bought in 1990 by ConAgra. Remember, ConAgra was a big food company, which estimates that it sells more than 50 million boxes of Swiss Miss hot cocoa mix annually. 50 million boxes a year.
Once again, Shark Tank, John. We're in the wrong business.
Charles's brother Anthony originally named the mix Brown Swiss after the cattle breed native to Switzerland, although Sanna products were made with milk from Holsteins, which has less butter fat. I think.
Was he out of Wisconsin? I was a good guess.
Yeah, it is. So Brown Swiss didn't do really well, so that's why they came with Swiss Miss.
Swiss Miss. Brown Swiss.
And then the daughter says, "My father kept changing the formula. Do you like A or B?" She was a tester. Which cocoa do you like? Dad, stop changing it. It's fine the way it is. So I just thought that was an interesting thing. It caught my eye this morning on the way to
find out when he was born. We'll add him to our business birthday. So, hey, if you're a fan of the show and you listen to our podcast, TFG Unbuttoned, yesterday we talked about on Tuesday. It's released on Tuesdays, and you can find out about it at focusgroupradio.com and download the audio version. But we talked about how Brunei has introduced Sharia law as of yesterday, as of today. You can be stoned to death in Brunei for being gay and having a consensual same-sex relationship. But somebody came to my attention and listened to the podcast yesterday and listed the other countries where it's already enforced, the Sharia law for being. Okay. Do you know any guess what countries they are?
Okay.
You can get stoned to death. The penalty for same-sex relationship.
I'm guessing there are some countries in Africa.
Okay. You want to name any?
Well, maybe
any obvious countries you think?
Well, how about what's off the coast of New Zealand, like Tanzania?
Yeah.
No. No, I can't actually offhand.
Well, they're all obvious. Saudi Arabia.
Do they actually? I mean, it's on the books, but do they actually do it?
Death penalty for consensual same-sex acts is part of law in these 6 countries, members of the UN: Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Nigeria, Sudan, Somalia, Mauritius, although they've stopped capital punishment, Iran, and Azerbaijan has it on the books too, although they haven't done anything with it. And of course, Russia is enacting some crazy laws. But what made me think about this is that, you know, there's that Somali representative out of Minnesota. She's stirring up all the trouble about Israel. But I'm thinking, why don't you worry about your own homeland where they're killing people for being gay?
Well, it's not just being gay, it's also adultery. So a woman could be accused of being an adulteress, and without much evidence, I believe, they're then buried up to your neck, and then stoning begins. So
you get tuned up on all this stuff.
Yes, you do.
Donald Trump called some of these places S-hole countries. I don't disagree. I mean, do you have any desire to go to Sudan?
No, I don't.
Yemen?
Nope.
Saudi Arabia?
Hey, look, I would love to visit Saudi Arabia or some of the other Middle Eastern countries, but you know, you're putting yourself at risk, man. Our neighbors upstate went to Egypt many years ago, and he brought over a disc for me to copy onto my hard drive, and so I could extract the photos for him from this camera that he had. And I remember him going through the pictures, and every so often I'd see this guy with a jacket, a blazer in the background, and I was like, is he on the tour? Oh, no, John, that's the security guy, the private guy that they hire to be with your tour group, and you stay
on the tour, all right.
Stay on the tour. And, you know, you and I have traveled with people from the IGLTA, the International Gay and Lesbian Travel Association, who have gone to some of these countries with incredibly restrictive and dangerous laws about being gay. And they're like, oh, no, don't worry, they're great. You know, we go to bars.
Well, somebody I know just came back from one of those places and has said the same sort of thing. And I wonder where groups like the IGLTA, although they say they're really just about peaceful travel and love and peace and hippie beads through travel and gay travel. But I think people need to be called out, or countries need to be called out for this sort of thing. And our State Department doesn't appear to be doing it, and I don't know if anyone else is, other than some of these human rights watch groups. But I have no desire to go to these dumps.
Well, I want to go to Egypt, for example.
Egypt's not going to kill you. They're not on the list.
Egypt.
They might not like you, but they're not going to kill you.
Well, we wanted to go around the time, literally, we were starting to book travel and make plans when Arab Spring came up in Egypt, when all the rioting started, and, you know, it was going to be the new democracy rising, et cetera, and they damaged artifacts in the museums, the whole bit. And from that day forward, I just thought, it's going to be a long time before we go. And when you inquire, I did, in fact, make some inquiries of some tour companies, and I said, I specifically said, my husband and I want to go. And, oh, no, well, you know, that's no problem. But, you know, how are your passports arranged? And so, obviously, with 2 men, we each have separate names, and no one's taking a surname or something, so that was okay. But
or your sleeping arrangement. When I went to Africa, they specifically put us with, I had to sleep with a woman every night. in my
In the
room.
same room. You had to share a room.
Yeah, which we pretended we thought, well, we might as well embrace it. Chris and I pretended honeymoon. We had beautiful rooms, big suites. But
You're such a great couple.
yeah, but it was like do not step out of line. Same thing. We had guards and people with us the whole time, and that was Kenya. But it was don't draw attention to yourself. Don't say anything. None of the talk. None of the nothing. Keep your mouth shut till you get up in the sky.
And to just cap this off, I was in an art discussion last night at a gallery here in New York called Philip. I forget the last name of the Phillips something space. Beautiful gallery, and they do this Art Matters. Once a month they have famous artists talk with a host who interviews them. And this month it was 4 notable queer artists. And one of the questions that had been posed was, is there such a thing as queer art? And, a lot of the audience had posed questions like, is it even necessary? The world has moved on. It's all about inclusion. And only one person on that panel said, by the way, you're sitting in New York City saying this, but if you go a little further out, no, it is not the norm. It's not been completely embraced, and it's still a divisive issue. And I felt like standing up and clapping, saying thank you, because I don't know where people get this idea that this is all we're a new utopia. We're not, right?
It was like the issue when we elected Barack Obama president, that racial issues.
All gone. They're all gone.
Although, congratulations to the new mayor of Chicago, the first female African American, but also the very first
lesbian
out gay person to run a major city. She's a lesbian, right?
I had no idea that campaign was even going on. Did you?
Well, it was weird.
You pay attention to
I did only, I used to live there, I used to live in Chicago, but Chicago's weird in that there was a runoff. And for whatever reason, they did the runoff in April, but it was the top 2 contenders, which were both African American women, so they knew they were going to do that. In terms of electing somebody, but in terms of the gender, it does appear it could all be false hope, because Pete Buttigieg, who we like, Mayor Pete, he moved right into second place in the polls this week.
Did he really?
For running it for the 2020 presidential election.
Did you see how much money he made?
He raised $7 million, but of course, old lady Bernie came out. He raised $18 million, but Bernie's been at it for 15 years raising money. But there appears to be no big issue by the fact that he's married to a man and has 2 kids.
Yet.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Now, who knows if this will sustain itself? But he seems to be taking a lot of the oxygen out of the room, particularly from Beto, who was kind of the new shiny penny. Buttigieg seems to be.
They brought him up at the discussion last night too, and one of the women on the panel, one of the women said, Mayor Pete. She goes, think about the country we live in. He can have a conversation with people. He can do all this stuff. And he's not been called out yet for the fact that he has a husband, but he's served in the military, all this stuff. And I'm just sitting there thinking, yet. And however, Pete Buttigieg has not declared he's running for president. He's an exploratory committee. Right. So I think when you look at the haul he had, the $7 million, which was for exploratory committee. I don't know. And then Joe Biden's getting all this negative press with the Me Too movement, and
they're dancing around this. The two of the women were Bernie supporters.
Yes,
we know Bernie's hired some very, very high-powered op-ed people. The timing of this,
oppos, right?
The timing of this seems suspect at best to me. But
even Bob looked at me last night when one of a newscaster just was reading the thing, and he said one of the women accused Biden of kissing her on the back of her head, on her hair. Now, I don't want to. If you felt assaulted by that, that's your right. But on the back of your head, on the hair.
I do think that's weird. I do know everybody says he's a bit touchy, very handsy, old school. But he's certainly not Harvey Weinstein, right? He's certainly not, or Bill Cosby drugging the women and they wake up and don't know what happened. Whether he took a photograph with somebody and they felt he invaded their space, okay.
So wouldn't it be interesting if Biden somehow decides not to run because of this, and maybe it was a little shenanigans with Bernie's Oppo folks, right? But wouldn't it be hilarious if he's eclipsed by someone like Mayor Pete? I mean, it would be very interesting. So you go out of your way to get rid of what you think is the front-running candidate, and then suddenly this guy appears out of nowhere, and he happens to be gay and married. And
well, you know, Bernie has his whole other set of issues. First of all, he's not a Democrat, and I'm tired of him running as a Democrat. And I'm tired of everybody that bitches and moans about the fact that Bernie wasn't treated fairly by the DNC. He's not a Democrat. He's an independent. Run as an independent.
Yeah.
If you want to run for president, run as an independent. Stop mucking up the Democratic Party. The other thing is, his wife has got issues, but in this day and age with our president who's got issues up the wazoo, I don't think issues are a problem anymore, but the wife has got some financial issues.
No. There'll be issues again when a Democrat's in the White House. Yeah. They're not issues. The deficit is no longer an issue. You know, but budget busting, you know, deficit's not a problem in the Republicans. But the minute a Democrat gets in, we got a real problem with this deficit thing. It's going to rob our children of their future.
And that Jim Jordan from Ohio, for our Ohio listeners, he's disgusting. And you guys should call him out for his behavior. First of all, he says he knows nothing about all the child and sex abuse at Ohio State when he was a wrestler. Yeah. But then calling out Elijah Cummings and some of the issues yesterday he did with trying to get the Mueller report, acting as if this is all just an outrage. I mean, I can't stand looking at people like him. I'm wound up today.
Well, welcome to spring. April showers bring May flowers. But
Brunei, Jim Jordan,
Mayor Pete. He's a bright spot,
security
though, right?
clearances for people in the White House.
Oh, that's not all right. Well, we better move along. And I'm going to say, I know what kind of did, but what caught your eye this week?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
So calm down. I saw this headline.
Oh, actually, you saw the one that I took, but I grabbed it.
I didn't get it in time.
Listen to that tone of voice. I didn't get it in time.
I should have done it. I wrote you that. I said I should have done that. I should have populated the deck before you. But I found this one. A friend of mine posted this, Renee. It says, is Poland spring water really from a spring? And there's a lawsuit that says not one drop. So over the years, it said, if you've ever had Poland spring water, you probably made the reasonable assumption that you were drinking water from a spring, because that's the way it's always advertised. If you're watching on the video feed, they take the different waters, and some of them are just tap waters out of the faucet, which they have on the right, and then some say they're actual spring waters that come from a spring. So Poland Spring's over on the side, that's spring water. But what this lawsuit,
they're claiming it is, yeah.
What this lawsuit is alleging is that it's just tap water that's just been mislabeled, and they're doing it to reap massive undue sales.
Mislabeled, okay.
So it contends that Nestle Waters, who does the Poland spring water, marketing and sales of what it advertises as 100% natural spring water, has been a colossal fraud perpetuated against the American consumer. It says that that spring that they used to get this water from dried up over 50 years ago. And they said it really is just water that comes out of you know, the tap, out of a
municipal water
that they've run
or
through.
A well or whatever.
Yeah, they've run and purified it a little bit. It said it's groundwater, and they just common groundwater they purified. But Poland Spring says that they've talked to the FDA, and as the FDA labels what is considered spring water, they meet all the regulations. So this is just a nonsense lawsuit. It's a 325-page lawsuit filed in Connecticut. Now, can you imagine? So somebody, I wonder who's behind going after them.
Well, I remember.
You really think the consumers are tuned up on this?
No. And I think most people buy bottled water based on price. You know what I mean? Like, and I remember when there was a big kerfuffle over Dasani.
Right.
Because it's basically filtered tap water.
Right.
But they never marketed it as spring water. Dasani was always just filtered water, right? Like, I think it just said filtered.
Well, I think it's bad to buy water anyway, but I do it.
Well, there are times you need to, but I agree with you. If you have a reusable bottle, use that. And
goes back to what I said many years ago. John and I wouldn't be sitting here if my mother listened to me when I was 5 years old in Roxbury, Connecticut, off Route 67. There was a Roxbury Spring. Cars all weekend long, New York plates, sometimes New Jersey, but mostly New York plates.
The finger goes up, New York plates.
All with jugs and bottles and cans, and all day long, night and day, flashlights and daylight, loading up water. And we'd drive by it every day, and I'd say, Mom, we should start charging for water. Crazy, Tim? No one's going to pay money for water.
And then we had a friend of ours, her mother, said the same thing. Mississippi was like, no one's going to buy bottled water.
No one's going to pay money.
You
for that.
mentioned something. There's a spring upstate that I ride by on my bike now and then, and
We're getting water out of it.
there will always be 2 cars there. Someone's filling a jug. It's great. The water tastes great. It's cold.
Town's it
It's in the town of Chatham.
in? Chatham Water.
Chatham Water.
You got to open up.
CW. Chatham Water.
CW. So, so this lawsuit's going ahead. They said that they sell approximately $400 to $900 million annually over the last 11 years, back and forth. That's a lot of money for the water. And they're still at the contention that it's 100% natural spring water, and the lawsuit says that they bought some fake springs to pretend it is, but it really isn't.
Some fake springs.
Yeah, 6 phony man-made springs to comply with the law.
God.
I don't know.
There you go.
I buy the Kirkland water from Costco. You get, I think, 36 bottles for $2.29 or $2.99.
I have not bought. I don't buy water.
You don't buy water anymore?
I do it. Actually,
Get it out of your fridge.
I do what you taught me. I bought these glass bottles from IKEA, and the refrigerator has a filter, and water goes through it. We fill the glass bottles, and that's our water supply. I mean, we could drink it out of the filter.
You take water to bed at night?
No.
See, I have to have water next to my bed, so I take a bottle.
I agree with you on that, and the thing I do is when I wake up first thing in the morning, I usually have 2 full glasses of water. Then I make my breakfast.
You don't have any tea, any coffee?
No tea or coffee. Bob has.
Have any caffeine at all?
I guess I must. I have dark chocolate. Probably has
drink soda.
No, I'm not a caffeine guy. Doesn't get me going.
I just like a warm beverage in the morning.
Well, Bob does too. He loves tea.
What caught your eye?
All right, so mine is different. It's the one that Tim was going to do, but I grabbed it first and populated the deck. And the headline reads, Garfield. Remember Garfield the Cat? Garfield phones have mysteriously washed up on a French beach for over 30 years. Now we finally know why. The mystery behind an endless amount of Garfield phones that have washed up on a European beach for the last 35 years, that's how long Garfield, and they're push-button phones, right, like they're the princess phone, has finally been solved, but the tale is far from over. Since the mid-'80s, broken and battered phones featuring the famous cat's smiling face have washed ashore in Brittany, which is a beautiful area, and locals couldn't track down where exactly they were coming from. Now, there was a thought that maybe a container fell off a ship and sank to the bottom, and every time a storm got kicked up, some of the phones were swept out of the container, and then they could you imagine walking on a beach in Brittany and seeing that darn cat, right? The phones were popular in the 80s, so a conservator, like a woman, a marine biologist named Simonine Lemure, says, we thought, yeah.
Here we go. Simonine Lemure.
I looked it up.
A conservateur.
Simonine Lemure. She's an eco-ecologist. She's an ecologist.
Voulez-vous français con
Simonine Lemure says, we thought it was under the sea. That's terrible, sorry. But the environmentalist finally caught a break when she was cleaning the beach one day with these phones, and a guy comes up to a local farmer and says, hey, he spotted a cavern filled with the phones while he was out exploring a set of caves that were only accessible during low tide. So he points her in the direction of the caverns, the caves, and she times it, and low tide comes, and guess what? They found the container where the phones were.
So it was a container.
It was, but it was not under the water. It was in a cave that was slightly, so only at high.
It just fell off a boat and kind of landed
floated into this cave, and then it was opened, and during high tide, some phones would get swept out, then low tide would come, then high tide would sweep a few more out. And so, the Garfield phone was really the gift that kept on giving, right? Ring, ring, Garfield here in Brittany. Ultimately, they were too late to stop the majority of the devices, because when they got to the cave, there was just broken pieces of stuff left, and they realized that all the phones are now out. But according to her, Simonine Lemure, she wants to make sure that people understand that this is an important thing, because according to the Ocean Conservancy, 8 million metric tons of plastic enter the oceans each and every year. And that's in addition to the estimated 150 million metric tons of the material that currently circulate through the aquatic habitats around the world. So, yeah.
Well, the amount of plastics in the ocean is disgusting.
Oh, it's horrible. Yeah.
They have you seen that? I guess it's a PSA they've been running where you can donate money and get a bracelet.
Yeah. I did see that, yeah.
It's like the Lance Armstrong thing, right?
The little rubber band.
Donate money and you get
It's another plastic thing, yeah.
I think it's a piece of the garbage.
Oh, that they remade into...
Yeah, there's a net. Get a little net on it. They shall.
It's so cynical sometimes, I tell you.
Well,
there you go.
It's more rubber, right? Business birthday.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings. But the focus group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
This may be the most tawdry of our business birthdays. We did a porn star once.
We did. That was a long time ago.
But this guy, Ernest Talley, not a household name, but he's known for his quick temper and quick decisions. He was described as tough as a cheap steak. He was one of the first millionaires of the rent-to-own industry. His name is James Ernest Talley. He was born April 3rd, 1935, died in 2003 of June. And you've heard of these rent-a-centers. Yeah. And he started out with an appliance business in Wichita, Kansas, and that was in the 60s. And then he opened another a bunch of chain-type stores until he ended up in 98 purchasing Rent-A-Center. And at one time they had over 1,400 stores. And they said really he was the person who put the rent-to-own industry on the map and also developed a bunch of entrepreneurs. And they said, although he's really not a household name. And there was an awful lot written about him. I read his obits and I read a whole bunch of other stuff, but essentially he was a kind of a pig at work, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Is that where your tawdry comes from?
Well, 18 women eventually filed lawsuits about a hostile work environment. Everything from if a new woman manager would start, he'd say, hey, you look good in that red dress, or how long do those legs go up, in the skirt?
Well, what year was it? The 70s, 60s?
90s.
Oh, no. That's not, no. I could say you could almost excuse it if it were, decades ago.
He had a knack for sizing up a situation and getting to the heart of the problem quicker than anyone has ever seen. He could walk into a rent-to-own store and tell you the problems before even talking to the manager.
Wow.
He could recognize the issues. He said he wasn't discriminatory. Nobody could understand why they said he was discriminating against women. They said he believed red, white, black, green, or yellow. If you could make money, he'd hire you. So they said that they thought a lot of this talk of him being kind of crude was unfounded. They said he had a totem pole in his office.
What the hell is the
He had all the managers.
What is that for?
All the managers of the stores were on the totem pole, depending upon how good your sales were.
Oh, you ranked.
And if there was a particularly bad month, the bottom three on the totem pole got fired on the spot. It's like GE. Get rid of the bottom three, right? Get rid of the 10%. So yeah, the bottom people on the bottom three faces on the totem pole would get the axe. So he was famous for his totem pole in his office. He also there's a couple things I thought you would love. He talked about again the women about commenting on their style. He did have a Las Vegas convention for the company's top brass every year for middle management and top store managers.
But it was in Vegas.
In Vegas, and it turned into a bit of a frat party every year, complete with scantily clad female cheerleaders available for photos with employees and group outings to strip clubs, which you paid for.
I'm assuming the group outing to a strip club, like, were no women working for the, was it all, was it
apparently the Karen
only?
Allen, you know Karen Allen, so I call her the Karen Allen of the Rent-A-Center. Tammy Shell said it was a lot of fun. She said, although women attended the convention and many found it offensive, this St. Louis store manager, Tammy Shell, said it was fun. She had no problem with the cheerleaders. She used to get her pictures taken with them as well. She said, and also watching the topless women dry-rate around the men, and the middle-aged men from the rent-a-store, she said was actually a lot of fun because they pretend that they were L.A. Rams. And he provided them money and trinkets to give to the strippers.
Money and trinkets. You can buy love with a
beads
and a rubber knife.
All came to a head when they used John Madden. You remember John Madden?
I remember John Madden, yeah.
He had his likeness. He was a cutout in all the rent-a stores, and so people started cutting out his crotch area and putting in hot dogs there and getting the pictures taken and showing the performance of either oral or anal sex. That's kind of put in
John Madden cutout at a Rent-A-Center store.
Right, and they went to HR. A lot of women went to complain to HR, and they just said, get over it.
By the way,
happy birthday, Ernie! Ernest Talley's a man after Garrett's own heart. Right, Garrett?
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
I love Vegas.
Yeah. Well, yes.
At 68, poor thing.
So, our friend Allie was in town. Was it last week, Garrett? Was she here? Was it 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, probably 2 weeks ago at least.
Yeah, and she was talking about Garrett's last visit to Sin City. And he went to a store with Allie, and he was like, oh, my God, I'm in heaven. I don't have to leave this store. But we have Garrett, and we have Steve in the booth. The boys in the booth.
Boys in the booth.
Helping us come to you as we speak.
I don't know if this guy would make the business birthday book, would he?
Oh, I think this is exactly what should be in a book on business birthdays. And by the way, you heard it here first. We are, yeah.
Don't you think, though? What do you think?
I think that's the kind of thing people want to read about. You don't want to hear about,
I invented the map.
you don't want to read about Bill Gates' birthday. We all know about Bill Gates. You want to read about this guy,
strip
Rent-A-Center,
clubs.
strip clubs, Rams, the totem pole. You'd be hard-pressed to edit that piece.
Totem pole.
Because you'd have to get the...
This picture. Oh, he was also, I love this part too. For 2 years, he took 2 years out. He was a representative from the state of Kansas.
You should have the totem pole in Congress, right? Whose votes are going up and down.
So, yeah.
That's a good one, Tim. Very good. Yes, and that deserves being a book. Hey, many of you know that Deep Discount is a friend of ours here on the Focus Group, and Deep Discount has a great new tagline. I subscribe to it wholeheartedly. It's Own Your Passion. And believe me, I own my passions. My latest passion was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I got it on Blu-ray from Deep Discount. Very pleased about that. And by the way, that's a movie you got to see on Blu-ray. Streaming just doesn't do it. You need the full-bore quality of Blu-ray. Anyway, comedy sale this week. And comedy in the Deep Discount world is stand-up and TV. And by the way, you get to Deep Discount by clicking on the shark logo at our Focus Group Radio page. Arr! And the logo is Sharky the Shark, and that will take you right to Deep Discount. We get credit for that. So it's comedy sale. Tim, what did you pick?
So we talked about this before, and Garrett in the booth had pulled up Sam Kinison before because I talked to him about, he did a riff on Sinead O'Connor. But it actually wasn't. When I went back and looked at it, it actually wasn't the piece I'm looking for. What I'm fascinated about Sam Kinison, he was a comedian. And so they have this documentary out or this bio movie out of him called I Am Sam Kinison on DVD. It came out in 2017, and it's under $10. And what I find interesting about it, I don't know if it's his estate. It must be his estate, but it's very difficult to find any content
So you're saying
with him or about
like
him online.
Policing all
I guess so. This is a feature-length documentary film, and I want to get it because I want to see if they do have some of his best bits on there. There are some things from maybe The Tonight Show or a few shows he was on, Letterman or something. He used to be a frequent guest on Stern.
Yeah.
But they said they've used extensive clips from his comedy specials to cover some of his favorite topics: marriage, women, homosexuality, God, religion, and world hunger. And he was a Pentecostal preacher's son turned stand-up comic, so he was used to doing kind of this preaching and screaming.
So the Pentecostal preacher bit explains, I think,
delivery.
Exactly, his fiery
Right, and his
delivery, right?
And he was, part of that MTV era. So I always loved him, and I still remember his bit about, world hunger. And I mean, I always found him very funny. But
the one thing he used to do is, why would you live in a desert?
Right. We got deserts too. We don't live in them. They don't need food. They need luggage. They need Samsonite. Of course they're hungry. You can't grow food in the desert.
And the Samsonite, they needed luggage to move.
They need luggage. They don't need an egg salad sandwich.
They need to move.
Anyway, he was killed by a drunk driver in 1992. I
remember that,
So,
yeah.
he met an early death. But it's I Am Sam Kinison, and it's part of the sale that's going on right now, which is the comedy stand-up, or the comedy sale, which includes stand-up and TV. So check it out at Deep Discount.
And I went for comedy as well. I didn't even go for a comic movie or something. I went for actual stand-up. You and I must have been on the same wavelength this week because I love seeing a good stand-up set, and so I saw this one on. I did your thing. I went like 7 pages in.
Maybe you go down the rat hole pretty
maybe
quick.
8, and I'm like, even on 8, 10, 12 pages into the Deep Discount comedy sale, you could still see things you automatically want. I picked Comedy Central's stand-up Vault number 3. It's only $7.35 on DVD, and it features Louis C.K., Patrice O'Neill, so I circled Kevin Hart, Chelsea Handler, John Mulaney, Amy Schumer. If I'm paying $7.35 to see just those 4 or 5 comics, I'm talk about being ahead of the pack. That's like $1.
Yeah, you're all
$1.75 per stand-up routine. And I happen to love John Mulaney, and I love Chelsea Handler, and I just saw Amy Schumer has a new comedy special out as well. The thing about stand-up, though, and I think we've talked about this before, and it might relate to Sam Kinison, and it might relate to what I'm talking about here, is I say pick up these older shows.
Right.
Because stand-up comedy is getting harder and harder. What can you say?
Can't say anything.
You know, and so you could pick one of these up and laugh at what we all used to call, you know, humor, right? And it's changed so much that comics are really constrained now. I mean, it used to be poking fun at stereotype, it used to be poking fun at society and politics. Now,
well, that's what made them funny. And whether you were the brunt of the stereotype or whatever, is people. It was the success of Archie Bunker, right? The absurdity of the stereotype. But I wonder, and I wonder about when I saw this stand-up, and there seems to be this new form, and it's not humor so much, but it's storytelling. Everybody's doing storytelling, these storytelling groups.
Yeah.
Because a lot of stand-up used to be storytelling, right? There would be a specific thing.
Well,
I think
a
Roseanne
comic would usually start, and then they
would family or growing up,
exactly,
or
and they would
travel.
return to the theme. Yeah,
right. And I wonder if storytelling has replaced some of the stand-up things because it's another way to look at yourself, maybe self-deprecating humor. I don't know.
What was the? And Garrett would probably know. I think one of the most famous stand-up routines that I remember back in the day was Eddie Murphy. Was that when he was wearing that like red leather jacket or something? Maybe it was called Notorious. I forget what the name of
Raw.
Raw. That's it. It's Eddie Murphy's Raw. And no one was spared in that special. Everybody got skewered down the line. And I laughed my ass off when he was making jokes about LGBT people, but because he's on stage, he's doing his show, he's not coming out and personally attacking me. I don't know.
You laugh because it's funny.
Because it's funny, yeah. So what our new release this week, by the way, at deep discount, Own Your Passion. And if you're passionate about this, you might want to get this movie. It's called Vice. This is Christian Bale portraying Dick Cheney on Blu-ray, nominated for 8 Academy Awards, including Best Picture.
I missed this at the theater.
Sam Rockwell plays George H.W. Bush, and I think that's an interesting casting call. Steve Carell's in the movie as well, and also Amy Adams is in the film. She was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. Christian Bale was nominated for Best Actor, and Best Supporting Actor was Sam Rockwell. So my mom loved Vice, and here's what she said to me about Vice. She said, it's sort of like a fable.
Uh-oh.
So I think what I take her meaning to be is that it's not necessarily historically perfectly accurate, but it's, you know.
Well, they're saying that, they've said this, right, that Dick Cheney was the most powerful man, and he was pulling the strings for the president or providing a lot of policy, I guess, that would be enacted through the president. Is that what she means by that?
Well, fable would be that they take liberty with the facts. So it's a fable.
Would the Crown be a fable?
No, the Crown. Well,
I mean, there's some truth to it.
There's a lot of truth,
you
but
don't know whether those conversations really happened.
Perfect example. You have no idea what happened inside Buckingham Palace. You're right.
So, okay, cool. Yeah, no, we have to see that. I'm going to have to get that because we missed that at the theater. So, Own Your Passion. Head over to focusgroupradio.com. Click on the deep discount logo and start shopping away. I recommended this week I Am Sam Kinison. John recommended Comedy Central Stand-Up Vault number 3 on DVD. And the new release is Vice on Blu-ray. Right, Garrett?
Thanks, Deep Discount.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have a couple shop talks for you, so stay with us.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Focus on the savvy side of 9 to 5 with The Focus Group.
Try, really try.
Listen, laugh, and learn with Tim and John.
I never try anything. I just do it.
Welcome back to the Focus Group. John Nash with Tim Bennett. FocusGroupRadio.com is the only URL you need to know about us. Everything's there. Media, partners, and information about us. And social media is Focus Group Radio. See how I got that down, Tim?
Got it all in, John.
Got it all in. Shop Talks, as promised. I teased this at the beginning of the show, and I was intrigued by this. Tim and I are going to dissect it pretty quickly. The headline reads, direct eye contact can be a sign of something much darker. Now, for many years, when we talk about interviewing, when we talk about meeting people in the business world and maybe the first impression you're making, we also talk usually about making eye contact. But there's a study that was done that indicates that the longer someone holds eye contact, it's not necessarily a good thing, and in fact, it could be a bad thing. What did you take out of this?
Yeah. Oh. No, I read through the whole thing, and then I I somewhat agreed. Well,
Yeah,
I think the issue was that we associate the confidence and maintaining eye contact with somebody shows that you're interested, you're paying attention.
And you're trustworthy.
And you're trustworthy and honest. And they said in negotiations they found when they've done studies and they looked at I think there was a particular program that they looked at that was a negotiation show in the UK.
That was that weird one called Golden Balls.
Right, that they followed everybody's eyes to see
what they were doing.
And more times than not, people that maintained the direct eye contact were more, I guess, untrustworthy.
Yes, and aggressive.
Or aggressive versus...
Competitive, aggressive.
Right. But then it finishes up with, however, in a social setting, direct eye contact is still good because it gives you a sign of intimacy and benevolence.
They did couch it by saying direct eye contact must be understood within the context of the environment. So you and I are sitting across from a client, we're negotiating a contract. The longer... And the client's staring at us, and the client's saying, I want to pay you this, right? And they don't break eye contact. That's the sign that they're intent on getting you down to a certain number. But maybe if it was the very first meeting you ever had with that client, it's like, hey, how are you? Oh, I like these guys.
Well, then they use the example of nature with animals. Yep. About eye contact is you don't want to ever look at an angry dog or somebody or an animal in the eye because that's...
Yeah, they said animals have direct eye contact not before engaging in benevolent behavior, but rather immediately before an attack.
So, I mean, there may be something said to that. I know when I used to interview people... And it interview people more than I do now, but interview people for work. If you ask a direct question, look them in the eye, and then you maintain the stare.
Oh, you've done this to me, and it unnerves. And you
just don't say anything. Because usually what ends up happening is then the person speaks and they go off on a tangent. They end up falling themselves. You trip up everything. But you
had someone do that to you, and you actually maintained
I learned many years ago, and they said somebody pulled me aside and said, "You're going to be interviewing with this guy named Gary, and here's what he's going to do. He's going to ask you a question. He said he's going to just glare at you." So they said, just glare right back at him. And they said, answer the question with just a very succinct answer.
So let's say Gary says to you, "What's your favorite color?"
Blue.
And then you said blue, and you just stare back, right? Okay, he's doing it right now.
And then he asked me a couple of questions. I remember there was something that was related to Georgetown University. And I remember because there was something with rowing, and it was a job. I was just out of school. And he ended up started laughing.
Did he really?
Because he said somebody got to you, didn't they? Because he was famous for doing this. And I just looked right back at him. He had this stupid-ass smile. He's back in his chair.
After he laughed, did you say something?
You
just kept staring.
I just kept
staring. Okay, so me and Tim were going on a train down to D.C. once. We were going to meet with a client. It was a contract discussion. And you're sitting across from me. I think we were on the Acela. And you looked directly at me and you said, you explain to me what this number means. And I didn't realize I was I was being schooled on how to deal with this. And you stared at me, and your expression was completely unreadable. And I'm staring back at you, and I'm looking away, and then I laugh or something, and you raise your finger. You're like, nope. Explain this number on the how'd you get to this number on the contract? And then finally, you said to me, you told me the story about Gary, and that's how I heard that story the first time. But that was my first immersion in this notion that if you're negotiating, that's how you establish primacy, I guess, right?
Yeah, or you do. There was a negotiation I was in where one party came in very, very high, so I purposely came in ridiculously low.
I know this story. I love this story.
It was the same sort of thing. And it was like, okay, you're going to throw out a ridiculous number. How about this ridiculous one on the other side? And then you just look at them, and then they're like, okay.
So they're both so far from the goalpost that,
now we have to talk. You tried to throw yours on the table. I threw mine back at you.
I think somebody was asking for like $200 or $300 a unit, and you said, how about $1?
No, they asked for $1,200.
$1,200 a unit.
I said, well, I'm prepared to pay $50.
$1,250, like that's.
And he got all flustered and well, we had our Big 8 accounting firm look at it, and I said we had our Big 8 accounting firm look at it.
I had my Big 9 look at it. We had our Big 10
I think it's now the Big 3 or the Big 5, whatever.
And then you took out a baseball bat and you laid it on the table.
We got to a great number. I remember going back and talking to the CFO. He couldn't believe the number.
Because they were prepared to go.
We were prepared to go double than what we ended up.
Yeah, you ended up. Yeah, that's right.
It was not listening.
No,
neither of the people work there anymore.
I was going to say all the parties are gone from those companies. So just to wrap it up, there are sometimes direct eye contact can be a sign of something darker. The research indicates that it happens to be in the case of competitive business situations. I would say that it's just one of those body things body language things you got to pay attention to, right? I still maintain that making good eye contact with someone's important, but they even said that normal eye contact is a few seconds and you look away, but it's those people that hold it for super long that kind of
You have to be able to read the room or read people sometimes, and that's always difficult. I don't think that's something you teach people or teach something. And again, back in my interviewing days, I would interview somebody for 20 minutes, and I'd be like, okay, great, he or she's a great hire. And they'd go through the process of interviewing with 4 or 5 other people who would spend an hour and a half with them. Yeah. And then be kind of on the fence. And I would say, if you can't discern in 20 minutes what's going on here, and at the end of the day, I think I always hired pretty good people. But that's not something you teach somebody. You just can't teach somebody how to read or how to be intuitive. You're intuitive in other things, particularly from a creative standpoint. But you can't teach that.
Yeah, and me and Tim spent a lot of time interpreting. Yeah. Behavior, emails, language, and we're close. We're fairly good at getting it right with that kind of stuff. Yeah. Not always, but all right. So our last shop talk this week is from the New York Times, and it's called "Productivity Isn't About Time Management; It's About Attention Management." Now, I particularly like this piece. So, time management is not a solution in and of itself; it's actually part of the problem. So, the guy that wrote this piece was at a conference, and someone walked up to him named Michael and said, "My boss wants me to be more productive." So the guy spent a few hours analyzing how he spent his day, and he came down to this. He goes, "This is going to sound like a joke. It's not. My only idea is to drink less water so I don't have to go to the bathroom so many times." Now, this was his idea for being more productive, is I'm going to drink less water so I don't go to the bathroom. And so the author, to kick this off, he says, "We live in a culture obsessed with personal productivity. We devour books on getting things done and dream of 4-hour work weeks. We worship at the altar of hustle and boast about being busy. The key to getting things done, we're often told, is time management. But after 2 decades of studying productivity, I've become convinced that time management is not a solution. It's actually part of the problem." Did you take that away from?
Yeah, and what I saw in this was, this is the one thing where you and I are exactly alike. We're both procrastinators. And your mother said this to you once, I think, to one of your teachers. You don't want to do something you don't want to do. If it's boring for you or it's something you're not interested in.
It was about math. Someone said John's going to be a failure in math because he doesn't like math.
You'll find every other distraction. I do that as well. You and I will get the work done, but I've tried to break myself out of this pattern, and for me it's more procrastination, but which relates to productivity. We know a lot of people that want to play office, and they're going to sit around and do lots of unnecessary work. Right.
Let's do emails. Let's do this. Let's do that. Oh, I can arrange my pens.
Right. But there was one piece I took out of here, which I thought for me made sense about how you're wired. And
it was the morning and night.
The morning and night thing. And I'm very much a morning person, whereas you're an evening person. And so for me, I should be doing my numbers and those sort of things in the morning, doing more routine tasks during the day, and then be more creative at night where I'm likely to shut down. You're the opposite.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think that's where the yin and yang.
That's where your thing came. It said, if you're more of a night owl, you might be better off flipping creative projects to your fuzzy mornings and analytical tasks to your clear-eyed late afternoons.
Right. But it says, pay attention to what consumes your attention.
Yeah.
If you're trying to be more productive, don't analyze how you spend your time. And I think that goes back to, we've all done this. I write a list down. I'm going to get all this accomplished today.
Never works.
And if you look at it,
I have lists of lists of lists that go back months. And
I think there's issues with owning your own business like we do, where you can't avoid a disruption. If a client says to you, how many times have you and I gotten the phone call at 10 in the morning, can you please have this to us by noon? That throws my whole list off.
Gone.
Or we just got one today. What's your Friday look like? Well, all of a sudden you and I have to be available for Friday meetings, which is fine. But if I was doing the product, well, nope, Friday's going to be my day to do dump. Well,
we got a call last week to revise a proposal, which is perfectly fine, and I want it on Friday. Okay, but the original proposal took, I don't know, maybe 20 of our hours to actually price and quote and
At least, and talk to
and call
people
other
and,
people and make sure our numbers aren't crazy and does this work and what would you charge for this and how does copyright. So then to revise it, and then they pulled out whole pieces that we weren't going to be doing. Now you have to reprice the whole thing, and it's crazy.
So when they talk about productivity in that aspect, then I think it's difficult, but it's paying attention to the right things, I think, is what my takeaway was. If you pay attention to the right things, the other things will get done.
And that's what the author says. He says, a better option is attention management, prioritizing the people and projects that matter, and it won't matter how long anything takes. Attention management is the art of focusing on getting things done for the right reasons in the right places at the right moments. So you and I do show up with our answers and our jobs on time. How we get there can be a little messy.
Do other things take a back seat? Yes.
Yes.
Which I don't like them to, but that's just what happens. What was the one thing we had a listener years ago said? Don't let the
dread.
The dread is
far worse than the deed. Yeah.
And a lot of times after you do something, be like, you know what, that wasn't so bad. It took me 2 hours to do, but I avoided it for 2 weeks.
So when I owned my first 2 agencies, I was the creative director, and both of my business partners handled accounting and all this other stuff. And I remember once our controller walked up to me and he goes, I want to show you, and my first business partner was traveling out of the country. He said, I want to go over the cash report with you. I'm like, the what? He sat at the desk and he made me understand what all the entries were. Here's what's in the bank. Here's what's coming in. Because we were an accrual-based company. It wasn't a cash-based business. Second business, my business partner had a degree in accounting, and that's what he did. But he spent hours doing this, right? So with our business, I do the bookkeeping now. And for a while, it was this, oh my God. I'd be like, oh, I got to do the accounting. Click, 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 click. Oh, there's a cat in a Roomba. Oh, look, someone's turned their house into a water slide, or anything but the bookkeeping. And then one day I sat down, and I think it was QuickBooks I started using, and I figured it all out. And now it's second nature, and it's kind of I don't call it a nonsense thing.
Necessary evil.
But it's the dread was way worse than the deed, because once the deed was done, I had control over the figures, and I could actually say to Tim, oh, we should this our cell phone bills or or whatever it is, right?
So the cat on the Roomba thing triggered something in me. So Paul and Mass,
yes,
mentioned on the Facebook. Have you been on Pluto TV?
I've heard of Pluto TV.
Wow, what are we missing out? I went to it, and
you guys know what
free.
Pluto TV is?
Yeah.
And it's free, and you get
free
it
TV
through the app
on your phone.
But it's got on your phone or your iPad or your computer.
Well, TV I grew up when TV was free. You had the rabbit ears on.
If you have a smart TV, you can go through it as well, and I believe through Apple.
Apple, really?
And it has a big chunk of stuff that you're paying for in other places for free.
Really?
It has a guide and everything. Yeah.
You can't believe what's on there.
I mean, like the little thing that says
CBS Evening News, and it's got great documentaries.
How are they doing this?
I don't know. Well, advertisers,
they throw
I guess.
ads in. And,
throw ads in.
Yeah.
But check it out, Pluto
I don't think
TV.
it's live.
No,
right?
well, there is. It looks like there's.
I'm not sure.
The running shows on the schedule, but no different than if you turned on the Discovery Channel and they were doing a show that was on at 8, but it was taped.
Because there was a service.
It was live news. Live CBS Evening News was on.
Pluto
TV.
Pluto TV. There was a service for a while that got shut down where they put all these little antennas up on a roof somewhere. And every account was one antenna, because according to the FCC, I think, stations still have to broadcast a signal.
Right.
And so they had rows and rows of these antennas, and you had your own antenna. Maybe it was called Antenna TV. And I don't think so, though. And it would pull it in, and they went to court. The cable companies went to court and said, no. This was not intended to be a new business. The individual can do it, but you can't set up all these antennas. And the court ruled in the cable company's favor, and that was all shut down. But for a while there, you were getting TV for like $5 a month or something, because it pulled in every single broadcast signal that was being freely broadcast. So.
You'll have to check it out. And I've told a couple of other people about it. There's movies on there. It's almost like a I don't want to say a low rent Netflix, but it's
It sounds great to me. And look, I'm on the verge of only having internet because I'm like you. I'm probably like the guys in the booth as well. There are specific things I tune into, and the rest is literally just click, 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 click. And it's getting harder to find even junk TV to watch lately.
Well, even watching the evening news, I used to watch the local news, and now for any more, I'll read it. And it's difficult to even, if you listen to the first 6 minutes of NBC, ABC, CBS, that's about the news, and then it's all health.
You got it. Or it's a nice story of the day.
Yeah,
Somebody got
someone
saved
came home from the military.
Hey, so to wrap up our thing about attention and getting things done and time management, if you're trying to be more productive, don't analyze how you spend your time. Pay attention to what consumes your attention. That's it.
John loves to finish.
Oh, wait. And the guy that wrote the article said, I'm pretty sure there's an 8th habit of highly effective people. They don't spend all their time reading about the 7 habits of highly effective people.
I thought that was a shot.
Yeah, I did too.
Did you ever read that book?
Parts of it.
Kind of religious based.
Oh my God.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's up there with, like, our favorite business book was always Rework. It's little essays about basically tossing all the rules out. So,
yeah. Hey, thanks for joining us here on the Focus Group. We appreciate those of you who join us live every Wednesday at 1 p.m. East. Of course, you can find out more about us and catch any of our old shows, plus our whole bank of programming over the last few years here on video at focusgroupradio.com. You can also find our podcast there, which is released every Tuesday morning, which is TFG Unbuttoned, a short 20-minute consumable podcast, John likes to call it. Thanks to Steve and Garrett in the booth. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
And remember to don't text and drive. I got to look at it because I always screw it up.
You invented it. Don't text and drive.
Arrive alive. Have a good week.
It's The Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.